Europe is home to some of the best roller coasters on the planet, with a huge selection of insane rides with powerful airtime and breathtaking inversions. To date, I've ridden over 1,200 different roller coasters around the world, and today I'm using that experience to rank the top 25 roller coasters in Europe. Will your favourite one make an appearance? Will there be any surprises? It's going to be a wild ride, so fasten your seatbelt, close your lap bar, and hold on tight for this countdown of the top 25 best roller coasters in Europe. Number 25. iSpeed. iSpeed at Mirabilandia in Italy was the first Intamin Blitz coaster to open in Europe, 2 years after the ride debuted with Maverick at Cedar Point. Whilst I admit this ride isn't as impressive as the original, it still packs an awesome punch, with a launch sending you from 0 to nearly 70 miles an hour in just under 2 seconds. The rest of the ride features a blaze of high speeds, twists and turns, inversions, and ejector airtime moments that don't hold back. I once marathoned this coaster with a few friends, and my shoulders ended up covered in bruises from the restraints, but that was a price I was more than willing to pay to ride this awesome coaster again and again. Incidentally, I recently got the chance to experience this slightly updated version of this ride in Turkey, which ditches the over-the-shoulder restraints for a lap bar, and that made this layout even better and even more re-rideable. Number 24. Phoenix. Phoenix at Far Up Summerland in Denmark is a fantastic coaster. It combines airtime, inversions, and a comfortable ride vehicle to make a coaster that you could ride all day and never get tired of. In fact, a couple people did that just last year when they rode from 9 AM to 5 PM and managed 154 consecutive rides. It may lack the sheer wow factor you get of some large coasters, but that doesn't detract from the wonderful joy you get from riding it, and it is, after all, the tallest and fastest coaster in Denmark. It even has a unique first element in the form of a magnificently floaty stall loop, and all the elements that follow have this wonderful flow to them, where every part blends seamlessly into the next. There's no less than 14 airtime moments to find on this coaster, and altogether it makes for a very modern and impeccably designed experience. Number 23. Osiris. Sadly, they don't really seem to make them like this anymore. Osiris at Parc Asterix in France is an amazing inverted roller coaster manufactured by B&M that packs a lot into its thrilling layout. A swooping first drop, fast inversions, low to the ground speed rushes, and high G turns that create that characteristic foot tingling are all blended together to make an awesome inverted coaster. The layout is much more interesting than the Batman clones you get at every Six Flags park, and the theming is even better than its bigger brother Montu at Busch Gardens. The ride has incredible pacing and always feels fast as you dive down close to the ground with your feet feeling just inches away from it. Osiris may be named after the Egyptian god of the afterlife, but riding it is sure to make you feel more alive than ever before. Number 22. Silver Star. Silver Star at Europa Park is a rather impressive coaster that stands at a mighty 240 feet above the ground. It held the record as the tallest roller coaster in Europe for a whole decade, and when it opened it was also the fastest in Europe, with a blistering top speed of 79 miles per hour. It really is an awesome coaster that focuses on floater airtime, and thanks to an upgrade from friction to magnetic brakes, it delivers the sustained flow to air that's a signature of all manufacturer B&M's hypercoasters. Silver Star gets its name from a sponsorship by Mercedes-Benz, and the ride lives up to this racing pedigree, with having a fast and tight chicane right before the end that really sets it apart from other similar coasters. This ride really is all about the airtime though, and if you love floating zero-G weightlessness, you're gonna love this coaster. Number 21. Superman Attraction de Acero. Now, some people may be surprised to see this ride on my list, but honestly, I think it is one of the most overlooked and underrated coasters out there. Superman at Parque Warner Madrid is a floorless coaster, which means that your legs are dangling freely even though you're sitting above the track, and I reckon it's probably my favourite floorless coaster in the world. The layout has all the staples of a big B&M looping coaster, but in addition you have a first drop that feels incredible in the back row, as you're ejected from your seat by some surprisingly strong airtime, and you also have additional airtime hills later on in the layout, which is something you just don't tend to see on a coaster of this style. The zero-G roll in particular on this coaster is, in my opinion, the perfect example of this element, providing pure weightlessness as you twist upside down through 360 degrees. It's that well designed that it should be considered the holotype for all future coasters that want to feature a zero-G roll, so they can copy this design exactly to get it right. Superman Attraction de Acero is a wonderful, unique ride that you really need to experience if you haven't been to the park before. Number 20. Nemesis. Nemesis at Alton Towers, or to give it its most recent title, Nemesis Reborn, is a point of pride for UK roller coaster enthusiasts, and rightly so. The unique circumstances which came to its creation are now legendary. Planning restrictions meant that Alton Towers had to keep the ride below the level of the surrounding trees, so in order to build a large roller coaster, they had to get creative and think around the restriction. So what they did was dig a big hole to put the ride in, and that created this monster of a coaster. The beginning of this ride is a real highlight for me and offers unique pacing. Once you come off the lift hill and turn left, you glide down a shallow slope, then suddenly you're flung head over heels in a corkscrew, before rapidly increasing in speed as you're squashed down in your seat in a high G turn, all the while dropping further downwards and going faster, and it's only then when the ride reaches its maximum speed. The rest of the layout is equally as relentless, and it's sure to take your breath away. Nemesis is so iconic and revered that as it reached the end of its service lifespan, rather than removing it, the park made the decision to replace all the track piece by piece with new track, preserving the original layout and allowing the ride to be enjoyed by future generations to come. The new track also brought with it a new colour scheme and theming that hasn't been a hit with everyone I know, and I've heard some people complain about a rattle that the ride has developed, but to me it's still a monster of a ride that delivers a unique thrill as you race through trenches and valleys, and the way the ride stays close to the terrain for pretty much the whole ride makes it feel like it's even faster than it actually is. Nemesis was the best roller coaster in the UK for a very long time, but times have changed and new rides have ridden to take its crown, as we'll see later on in this list. Number 19. The Ride to Happiness. The Ride to Happiness at Plopsa de Pan in Belgium was a coaster that I found really hard to place on this list. When I first experienced it, it honestly blew me away, as I'd never ridden anything like it before. This modern extreme spinning coaster delivered a unique ride every single time, and the layout was packed with strong airtime moments and smooth inversions. The two launches both packed a punch, and the spinning element made even routine inversions like a vertical loop feel unique. The Ride to Happiness has loads of fans that would probably place it much higher on this list, but for me, especially in more recent times, I kinda feel the wow factor and novelty of this coaster have worn off a bit. I've probably brought this on myself as I've ridden this ride so many times, and it's just so easy to get to after crossing the English Channel that it would be almost rude not to visit when heading onwards into mainland Europe from the UK. Since riding, I've also ridden Time Travel at Silver Dollar City, which is the same style of coaster, but the Plopsa ride is still much better than that one. Next year should be interesting though, as Europe will be getting another installation of this ride type at Holiday Park in Germany, and I'm definitely looking forward to what they do with that coaster there. Number 18. Lech. Lech Coaster at Legendia in Poland is a brutally intense coaster, so much so that it may be a bit too much for the average theme park visitor. The pull-out from the first drop into the first inversion delivers strong sustained positive G that makes your vision go all funny and your peripheries grey out, and after that it's a relentless assault of airtime hills, inversions and twists that make for a breathtaking ride that pushes the limits to the extreme. I remember when on a trip with Coaster Force, we had an exclusive ride time session on this coaster, and very few of our party could handle so many back-to-back rides without taking a break. Just like Intimidator 305 in America, this one may be a bit of an acquired taste in terms of intensity, but for me it's an incredible coaster that just doesn't let up and delivers an absolutely mind-blowing ride. Number 17. Der Schwur des Karnan. Karnan at Hansa Park in Germany is an epic coaster that really is unlike anything else. More than anything though, this attraction is an experience more than just a roller coaster. From the moment you see the ride, it's undeniably impressive with a massive tower themed to look like a castle. From there you're introduced to the ride's story and gradually drawn in with themed rooms with projection mapping, video screens explaining the history of the tower, and somehow everything from the ride lockers to how you're separated into rows before riding has been made to enhance the story and immersion even further. When the actual coaster begins, you set off into the darkness of that huge tower, where the ride is a bit of a trick up its sleeve that I'll refrain from spoiling here. After that surprise, the music swells as you hold up the tower and face a 220-foot drop that launches you at nearly 80 miles an hour into a layout that features some really unique elements, as well as high-speed, low-to-the-ground turns and jumps that make for incredible pacing. You might think it's all over as you enter the tower again, but Karnan has one final surprise up his sleeve, where you're flipped upside down right when you think the ride might be over. What makes it really special though is the way that the ride's story and theming and music all come together to make something even greater than the sum of its parts. It becomes simply epic, and it's a ride you should definitely make every effort to try and experience if you can. Number 16. Red Force. Red Force at Ferrariland at Portaventura in Spain is currently the tallest operating complete circuit roller coaster in the world, even though it hasn't always held that title. It's a record that I don't think Europe has ever held before, at least not since the very early days of coasters, so that makes it a pretty big deal. This gigantic coaster stands at a mighty 367 feet tall and has a launch that accelerates you to 112 miles an hour in just 5 seconds. The launch on this thing is simply incredible and feels awesome as you hurtle towards the giant top hat element before going vertical until you crest the top and get some amazing airtime that continues all the way down as you drop back to earth. There's also another surprise pop of airtime to enjoy as the ride slows down and jumps up a dip, and even though the whole experience is over in a matter of seconds, those seconds are sure to take your breath away. It's a speed demon that everyone needs to experience at least once. Number 15. Expedition G-Force. Expedition G-Force at Holiday Park in Germany truly broke the mold when it opened in 2001. The first drop in particular was unlike anything else at the time, dropping 82 degrees whilst twisting 72 degrees to the right, and in the back row it still has to be one of the best first drops on any coaster worldwide. After it opened, it topped annual internet polls and was ranked by enthusiasts as the #1 coaster in the whole world no less than 5 times, and it's still an incredible coaster today. The sustained ejector airtime is exactly what you want on this sort of coaster, and the rest of the layout sends you soaring over the treetops, providing some amazing views as this coaster swoops around the park. The ending sequence of Expedition G-Force is really hard to beat as well, with a series of powerful airtime hills that launch you out of your seat all the way until the ride hits the brakes. Expedition G-Force really was a true landmark coaster for Europe, and showed that European rides can easily compete with the best that the rest of the world has to offer. Whilst nowadays there are larger, faster and more modern rides around, there's still something to be said for this wonderful classic coaster. Number 14. Untamed. Untamed at Walibi Holland opened in 2019 as the first coaster in Europe to receive manufacturer RMC's hybrid iBox track conversion. Before this conversion, it used to be known as Robin Hood and was a fairly unremarkable wooden coaster, but all that changed when RMC added steel track on top of the wooden structure that made it taller, faster, and allowed it to make some crazy inversions with unnatural twists and turns. The rework of the track created a layout that has much stronger airtime, and the sequence of the first drop into the first big element is one of my favourite sequences on any coaster. This 270-degree double inverting stall, which is the rather technical name RMC gave it, is a wonderful mix of airtime, hang time and sheer fun as it twists high above the ground. It's a shame this element hasn't been copied by any other coaster, as it's a great way to change direction and invert at the same time. But this is the only coaster in the world to feature it, and that element is just one part of an incredible ride. There's loads of airtime to be found in this twisted mess of steel and wood, and the final low to the ground heartline roll inversion is the perfect way to end this crazy ride. It's almost like the Mosasaurus roll on Velocicoaster. Untamed is a wild and unforgettable ride, and who knows, maybe we'll see another wood to steel conversion in Europe in the not too distant future. Number 13. Batman Gotham City Escape. Batman Gotham City Escape at Parque Warner Madrid is a thoroughly modern coaster that gives any other launch coaster a run for its money. Featuring the newest style trains and track elements that manufacturer Intamin have ever created, this high-tech design tears around the track, and it's got 3 separate launches. The ride looks awesome, and the taller section of track has become a real centerpiece for the park, and that top hat is rather special too. At the top you're held briefly back by a brake before going over the edge of a beyond vertical drop, and it's a real highlight of the ride when all that anticipation builds up before that drop. The rest of the ride is a mix of high-speed inversions, powerful pops of airtime, and a final 0G stall that's all about the hang time right before the ride ends with a spike section and a rollback. Batman Gotham City Escape is also quite nicely themed, and it's reused some of the sets from the previous motion sickness simulator that they had in the area that closed some 10 years ago. It's a little annoying when you just want to ride and you have to watch the same pre-show every time, but it's more than worth it when you get to experience this awesome coaster. Number 12. Colossus Kampf der Giganten. Colossus at Heide Park, Germany certainly lives up to its name, as it's one of the largest wooden coasters on the planet. This huge ride has some massive airtime hills, and whilst the strength of the airtime can be a bit variable, and it doesn't usually give quite the same consistent ejector air that El Toro does, it still delivers a fun, airtime-filled ride whilst maintaining that classic wooden coaster feel. The layout may even look pretty basic, as it's the same out and back kind of design that wooden coasters have been using for a century or more, only this layout is much bigger, and with that size comes speed and better airtime. The ride was fully retracked in 2018, and new theming elements were added with fire, and who doesn't love a good fire effect? This renovation cost the park some 12 million euros, and it's definitely money well spent so the ride can live on and thrill riders into the future. The sheer size of the wooden structure of this coaster is certainly spectacular. It's a real shame that we only ever got 4 of this style of Woody around the world, as every one of them delivers a great ride, and Colossus is right up there with the best. Number 11. Taiga. Taiga at Linnanmäki in Finland is a great fast-paced and varied ride that packs a lot in, and it really makes the most of the limited space that it takes up. Squeezed onto the side of a slope and soaring over other rides, this is another example of how limited space and restrictions can force creativity and lead to an absolutely amazing and unique coaster. Taiga has 2 launches, and both of them feel pretty powerful as they send you into this twisted and coiling jumble of blue track. There's a great mix of positive and negative G-forces, and it's got awesome pacing as the ride flows effortlessly through airtime elements and inversions. Taiga is now the headline attraction of the park, and it's hard to imagine it ever being topped with the limited space the park has left to use. Number 10. Conda. Conda at Walibi, Belgium is the latest mega coaster from Intamin, and is really quite remarkable. It may not be the tallest coaster, standing at less than 165 feet tall, but it's got an incredible layout filled with modern airtime elements that's sure to put a smile on your face. Essentially, it's a hypercoaster in all but name, as it's just a little undersized, but it makes up for that with a wonderful airtime, and it's still the tallest coaster in the whole Benelux region. From the twisted first drop to the non-inverting Cobra roll, Conda provides a ride unlike anything else, with airtime coming at odd angles and unexpected twists and drops in every section of the track. The ride never lets up, and it's thrilling from start to finish, with a satisfying ride length and endless re-rideability. The theming is also quite well done, and it all makes for an incredible attraction for the park. Number 9. Hyperia. Hyperia at Thorpe Park opened just last year as the tallest and fastest coaster in the UK, and it's arguably the most significant coaster to open here since Nemesis did some 30 years ago. It's a little on the short side, which has disappointed some people, but the elements that make it up all hit hard and deliver one intense airtime-filled ride. It really is all killer and no filler. The first drop in particular, which rotates a full 180 degrees whilst going vertical, has to be one of the best first drops in the world, and the airtime in the back row during that is simply insane. I would have preferred a longer ride, but this 236 foot tall monster really demonstrates how far coaster design has come in recent years. Riding this coaster, it feels like you're barely in your seat from the moment you crest the lift hill all the way to the brakes at the end. It's really incredible. The UK now has a thoroughly modern coaster it can be really proud of, with some unique elements, my favourite of which is this sequence of an insane overbank that just keeps on twisting round until you're back upright facing the opposite direction. If the ride was just a bit longer and had a few more elements, it would likely be much higher in this list, but in my opinion, as it stands, it's still more than worthy of being in the top 10. Number 8. Helix. Helix at Liseberg is another coaster that utilises the terrain it's built on to create something wonderful and unique. This Mack Rides multi-launch coaster is a wonderful mix of large elements and low-to-the-ground speed that delivers a breathtaking ride. One of my favourite parts of this coaster is the airtime hill after the second launch, as it delivers really strong air that can catch you off guard if you're not expecting it. Helix is wonderfully smooth and easy to ride, and it's a coaster I'd happily have multiple back-to-back rides on. Like many epic rides, it's also got a unique soundtrack that helps build up the hype before you ride, and every time I hear it, it brings back happy memories. Night rides on this coaster are particularly great, as the park is located within the city, and flying above Stockholm on this coaster when it's all lit up is a really unforgettable experience. If Helix is a weak point, then it would probably be the launches, which admittedly are a bit lackluster, but the rest of the layout more than makes up for that, and it's a near perfect blend of inversions and airtime that comes together to make something really wonderful. Number 7. Voltron Nevada. Voltron Nevada at Europa Park is a thoroughly modern coaster that combines theming and roller coaster elements in an incredible way. It's the latest attraction at the park, and it's essentially a showpiece for Mack Rides to demonstrate all the things that the latest coaster technology can do. And it can do a lot. From the trick track that bounces the train up and down with special effects, through the beyond vertical launch and mid-course turntable, there's barely a moment to catch your breath, and the track in between these special elements has incredible variety. You'll be launched forwards, backwards, and go upside down, head over heels, no less than 7 times. It's a fantastic ride. Voltron also has some amazing theming around Nikolai Tesla, and there's electric effects and other interesting props that immerse you in this world and the ride's story of a teleportation experiment. When it first opened, there were some issues with some uncomfortable rattle on the wing seats of some of the cars of this ride, but I've heard recent reports saying this problem has now been fixed, and that could only make the ride better. Voltron really is an incredible coaster, and a really wild ride with so many elements that come at you thick and fast. It's too much to take in one ride, but that just means you have to ride it again and again to fully appreciate it, and doing that is a whole lot of fun. Number 6. Shambhala, Expedición al Himalaya. Shambhala at Portaventura will always be a special coaster for me, as had I not ridden it on a whim during a fateful 2013 holiday to Barcelona, my life would be very different now. This was the roller coaster that made me an enthusiast, and sparked a journey that's taken me all across the world, and some 1200 coasters later, it's still one of my favourites. After the first drop, the airtime over that first hill seems to last forever, and it's that perfect floating weightless kind that made me feel as if I was flying. The ride is all about that floater air, and you just want to throw your hands up to fully experience and appreciate it as you soar above the ground and over many camelback hills. There are few coasters in the world that deliver the purest sustained floater air that Shambhala does, and it's undoubtedly my favourite B&M Hyper, and truly the best in its class. Number 5. Zadra. Zadra at Energylandia was the first ever RMC hybrid coaster to be built from the ground up. That is, using a brand new wooden structure, rather than reusing an old wooden coaster like Untamed did. It's therefore clear that the designers had a lot of freedom, and they really didn't hold back, as this ride is wild and crazy. The airtime is strong and the inversions are wonderful and floaty, but it's the pacing that really sets this coaster apart. From the very first drop all the way until you slam into the final brakes, it's relentless and hauls around the track when it's fully warmed up. Somehow Zadra just seems to maintain its speed like nothing else, and all you can do is hold on, or throw your hands in the air as it tears around the track. The only downside of this coaster is the ridiculous queue line, which means you literally have to walk about half a mile when you exit the ride until you can ride it again, even if there's very few other people waiting to ride. If you're keen on getting your daily step count in though, Zadra will certainly help, as despite the distance involved, you'll want to ride this coaster again and again. Number 4. Taron. Taron at Phantasialand is a true feast for all the senses. This coaster looks stunning with its rustic theming and impressive rockwork, and it looks even better at night when the atmospheric smoke effects and lighting come on. The music that fills the area is majestic and unique, and hearing it just makes me think of this awesome ride, and that somehow makes it even more epic. The sound of the launches as well is even more music to my ears, as it echoes off the walls of the Klugheim area and mixes with the excited screams of riders. I haven't even mentioned what it's like to actually ride the coaster yet, and that's the best part of all. The launches are incredible, the speed feels amazing, and the twisted chaotic turns of the track make for a varied ride that never lets up. Taron really is something special, and just watching it weave around the scenery is quite a sight to behold. There's a great mix of forces through the ride experience, from outpacey airtime to high G turns. There really is never a dull moment. Taron instantly became the headline attraction at Phantasialand, and I don't think there's another coaster that can match its amazing combination of a thrilling ride with such epic scenery and theming. Number 3. Wildfire. Wildfire at Kolmården Zoo in Sweden is an amazing coaster, and the fact that this huge world-class ride is at a zoo with only a handful of other smaller attractions is pretty crazy. It's a fantastic zoo, but the coaster definitely puts it on the map for roller coaster enthusiasts. Unlike some other RMC wooden coasters, this one has really withstood the test of time and still rides great today. The unique setting of this coaster is one of the things that makes it stand out even more, as it's built on some rocky terrain, and it makes the most of that, diving over boulders and into valleys, and delivering an awesomely paced ride. If you're lucky, you might also catch this ride just after it's rained, as it goes even faster than normal in those conditions, and that makes every single element more powerful and more intense. The difference that makes cannot really be underestimated, as when it's running a bit slow and cold, the ending can feel a bit underwhelming, but when Wildfire is fully warmed up and on a slick track, it really flies, and it feels like the whole track layout is taken at breakneck pace. There's a few fun inversions in the course, but other than the first two elements, the whole layout stays close to the ground, and that just provides an incredible speed sensation as you rocket past trees and rocks and parts of the ride structure. When I visited, there's also been scarcely any queue to ride, and going around the course of this again and again puts a huge smile on my face. Number 2. Tutatis. Tutatis at Park Asterix is only 2 years old, but I'm pretty sure that in the year it opened, it was my most ridden coaster for that period, and it just seems to get better and better every time I ride. The launches are forceful, the airtime is powerful, and the pacing is impeccable. Every element on this coaster offers something different, and I've loved every single ride I've had on it. Night rides in particular were amazing, and every time I've queued for the coaster, it's been well worth the wait. The variety of forces you get with the swing launch is a real highlight as well, and that third launch that absolutely sends you feels incredibly quick, which makes the small airtime hills you go over really pack a punch. Altogether, it's an amazing construction that is genuinely one of the best coasters in the whole world. Number 1. Hyperion. Hyperion at Energylandia is an absolutely wonderful ride that combines everything I love about roller coasters into one incredible package. The first drop is massive, and it isn't that far off being considered a gigacoaster, and the airtime hill that follows delivers sustained ejector air of the very finest quality. It's got to be one of the largest airtime hills in the world, and if you can be lucky enough to get the ride in the back row in the middle seat, it's even better. The rest of the layout is filled with big elements and high-speed, low-to-the-ground twists and turns. It's like it combines the big elements of other Intamin hypercoasters with the high-speed twists and pops of air you get on a coaster like Intimidator 305 or Maverick. I love every moment of this ride, and I know some people prefer Zadra at the park, but for me, this is the very best coaster we have in Europe, and one of the top coasters in the whole world. So there we have it, my list of the top 25 coasters in Europe as of the start of 2025. As always, my tastes change over time, so if this list contradicts another one, then that's why. There's a few other coasters I would have loved to include on this list, but the nature of a top 25 list means there can only ever be 25 entries, and we have way more than 25 world-class coasters here in Europe. Were there any entries on my list that you feel strongly about that I've either under or overrated? Let me know in the discussion in the comments section, and click on that like button if I included your favourite European coaster in my list. 2025 is looking to be a fun season for coasters in Europe, with highlights including the first ever dueling RMC single rail coaster, and at least 3 Mach looping coasters to look forward to. I'll hopefully get to ride and review them all later in this year, and who knows, maybe they'll be worthy of a place in the top 25. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.